Hello, this is Reverend Don Lewis coming to you from beautiful Salem. And tonight we're continuing our discussion of time magic, and I'm going to pick up where we left off with why time magic is difficult and why so few people practice it. Time magic, like any kind of magic, works because the world that we think is so very solid really is not. It's very fluid, it's very malleable, it reacts to thought, to emotion, and to physical action. Time, like space, is illusory in many ways. We do not have a perfect understanding of this. I don't think anyone claims to have a perfect understanding of it, at least in the metaphysical world. However, we do know that it reacts and that it is not the static thing that it sometimes appears to be. The reason that this is an issue and why it makes it more difficult is that we base our lives on the idea that the universe is a solid fixed entity. That A will always lead to B, B will always lead to C. In the magical world, that is not necessarily true. When you start working with magic, and even more with something like time magic, A can sometimes lead straight to C, or it can lead to M, or F, or G. And if you are not exceptionally well-grounded, this can be very bad for you, because the illusion of time, the illusion of reality, is how we order our experiences in such a way that we can make sense of them and understand them, and in such a way that we can use this world to lead useful physical lives. When we cut those threads, we sometimes lose that ability. I've known a number of people, some of whom were aware of it, some of whom were not, who had really lost their connection to reality by working with certain sorts of magic, because it revealed to them the illusory nature of reality, and A stopped leading to B for them. This is what makes time magic in particular so very dangerous. It's not because you may disturb the space-time continuum or the timeline or other things that you might see in science fiction. It's because you can disturb your own understanding of reality considerably. If you're going to do this sort of thing, you need to be extremely well-grounded, or it can really cut you loose. Traditional Kabbalah at one time was restricted to people over the age of 40 who had children. The reason for this is because people who had loved ones and responsibilities and dependents found it much harder to become ungrounded than people who did not. And although I don't particularly feel that that prohibition is a necessary one, I do understand the reason for it. And I would recommend to people practicing magic in general that they really make an effort to stay grounded. If you read our materials and our exercises, you will see we really emphasize grounding. If you lose your groundedness, you lose your place in reality. And in the magical community, we see a lot of people who've done that. It is very important, if you're going to do this level of magic, and this series is not going to be talking about how-to particularly, although we will talk a little bit about that. But if you do try to do things like time magic, it's imperative that you also work really hard to stay grounded, and even as you try to look through the illusion of time, that you also remember that that illusion has a very important purpose, and you don't just cut it out. So that's my caveat on time magic. And to continue our conversation, it really can be a very effective tool. I myself primarily use it in order to try to get more rest than my actual physical life allows, by manipulating particularly those periods of time when I'm able to rest. Now, I once had a priestess of our tradition, the Corellian tradition, remark to me when I had made the comment that there were not enough hours in the day to get done the things I needed to do, that I wrote about time magic, I ought to know how to change that. And you know, it doesn't really work that way. There are things you can do, but it does not give you a perfect mastery of time any more than the practice of magic gives you a perfect mastery of space. it does give you additional tools. Um, to this day, I do not have enough hours in the day to get done the things I need to get done, even though I do definitely feel that I magically extend to some extent the hours that I'm working with. I've also known people who do the opposite, who shorten their hours, particularly if they're traveling or doing other unpleasant business. When I was taught these things, I was taught specifically that it was not a good idea to shorten time, because we only have so much of it no matter what we do, and therefore we should not take away from it, but only add to it. And generally speaking, that's what I've done. I'm particularly fond of a technique called psychological time, and we discussed this in our third degree materials. Psychological time basically involves extending the duration of a certain activity, such as rest or sleep, but it could theoretically be any activity. I particularly tend to use it for rest because there have been many times in my life where I have not had the opportunity to get enough of that. And so I alter it metaphysically. We could argue whether that is actually affecting time or affecting our perception of time, but to be perfectly honest, I don't really know that that matters, because both would be forms of time magic. I will leave the details of psychological time to those who are studying third degree, where we talk about how to do it. But what I will say is that, and I say this in third degree, that many of the details of this are things that people are still learning, still studying. And you know, we often in the metaphysical world act as if we're trying to rediscover things that people knew long ago. And many people actually think that that's what's going on. The truth is we're blazing new trails all the time. Time magic, for the most part, is a very new metaphysical trail. Not that nobody has ever done it, but in terms of the knowledge of it, there's not really that much. And a great deal of it is, in effect, a metaphysical frontier. So there's only so much to say about it because there's only so much that people have done so far. It's one of those things that I expect to see continue to expand during my lifetime, and I'm actually very curious to see what people do with it. In our next installment, we're going to talk a little bit about how to, and although not a great deal, because again, it is something that you want to do with some care. But until next time, may you blessed be.